Hello, and welcome to our webcast today that we're now calling Talent Matters.
And today's subject is the best performance accountability tool you'll ever see. So we want to make sure that we give everybody else a chance to be logging in, but we'll go over a couple of housekeeping things in the meantime. You know that you'll always have access to the slides and the recording of this shortly after it's done. Certainly
Actually,
by
the
Monday.
slides are up now already.
The slides are up
Yeah,
now
how about
already.
that?
Pretty good.
Obviously, the recording's on.
The recording, the recording will probably be available later today or Monday. And then the second thing is it's going to last somewhere around 30 or 40 minutes, depending on the number of questions that we have. We usually shoot for about 30 minutes. And if we don't get to all the questions, we'll find a way to get the answers to everybody who had signed up for this anyway. And finally, what's the third piece? If you have any questions or comments, please put them in your chat. We are going to try to have one or two of our team members manning that as we speak. So we're hoping to get that going.
Great. So today we're going to be talking about the Performance Acceleration Tracker. We call it the PAT. And it's the tool that we roll out with all of our clients as a part of either the accountability system or the Visionary Integrator program or even a part of a new hire. This is the best tool we can use or that our clients have found for holding team members accountable.
And for those of you who don't already know, I'm Cindy Gave, founder and visionary of the Metiss Group.
I'm John Gave, business and marital partner.
Yes. And so, why this webcast?
So we've talked about our job scorecard before. We're gonna review that a little bit and talk about how it's important for various stakeholders with the job to be a part of creating that job scorecard, which then turns into the Performance Accelerator Tracker. We're going to talk about why accountability is important and how to understand that in today's world. It's much different than it used to be. We're going to see how onboarding today is a little bit different than it used to be and how some best practices around that can be presented. And then performance reviews. The accountability tracker is a part of the quarterly or regular review process.
And we actually call it the Performance Acceleration Tracker.
Yes, not account. The Metiss Group has been around since 1996. We have presence in Charlotte, North Carolina, where we're currently at today, as well as in the Detroit, Michigan market, where we started this whole thing in 96. Our area of focus is in two different areas on human behavior, accelerating the performance of the people who are already on board, helping to develop those leaders, helping to make their direct reports all that much more productive. And then getting the right people in the organization, our selection services, as the second half of our service offering, where we evaluate candidates, ensure successful hires, and this whole scorecard and performance acceleration tracker begins there.
So remember, it's getting the right people in the right seats and then getting extraordinary performance out of them. That's what we're focused on. All of our processes start with some self-discovery, getting a feel of where we're starting from, and then it launches into some structured learning, some one-on-one coaching, and some practical application, because we don't learn if we don't practice it. Imagine if you tried to go play golf without trying to practice it first.
Or even practicing it. So we wanted to start off with defining what accountability is. And of course, we had to go to ChatGPT for the answer, as more and more people are doing
nobody
nowadays.
Can find Merriam-Webster.
It talks about the obligation to deliver on an agreed upon expectation, take ownership of the outcome, both whether it's successful or not, and being answerable for the results and following through on those commitments. That's what the tool that we're going to introduce is really built to do. Take the expectation and ensure the follow through.
So I know we hear a lot of people, especially when I'm speaking to Vistage groups, talk about, I wish my employees would take ownership of this. First of all, employees really don't like to hear the word ownership. What we're really focusing on is accountability. We want them to take responsibility for their own actions, the impact they're having on things, and the things they're responsible for. Our challenge is, well, we may be thinking we're pretty clear about our expectations. Most of our direct reports are not nearly as clear, and their mind reading skills probably aren't that great. So the clearer you are about what the expectations are, the easier it is for someone to take accountability. But it's really hard for somebody to say, oh, I messed up, if they didn't know it fell into their jurisdiction to begin with.
So oftentimes we talk about the importance of personal accountability, and that's a very important characteristic that we screen for when we're looking at candidates. It's a little bit different than accountability. Personal accountability is something somebody chooses to do themselves. It isn't necessarily an accountability that is expected of them outside of them personally. Both are important, but personal accountability comes from within. So today's even harder for holding people accountable. Lots of different factors in play around accountability in the workforce today. We've got this whole hybrid and work from home thing, which has gotten a lot better, but it's still difficult to stay on the same page on expectations. There are a lot more people leaving jobs sooner nowadays. I heard something recently that the average 30-year-old has had like 5 different jobs so far, and there's just that movement.
Think about how easy that is. In the old days, if you were going to leave your job, you at least had to turn in your resignation in person. You had to go back to your desk, put all your personal items in the box, and then take the walk of shame out the door, carrying your box, saying goodbye to everybody who's either going, please don't leave us, or giving you dirty looks for increasing their workload. And so now you simply text your boss, you're gone. And you just, if you're working hybrid or from home, and you just answer the phone differently the next day. There's no personal items to aggregate and take home with you. So the transience is much easier. Plus, if people aren't necessarily in the workplace all the time, they don't necessarily have that bond to the culture and to each other. And so it's a little bit easier to go, it doesn't matter where I'm working, because there's not that connection to the place.
Right, and so as a result, it's easier to not be held accountable and just leave if it gets too difficult. Another big challenge we're having today is our leaders are younger and younger, and they don't have the tools or the experience to hold their team accountable. And that is a result of our workforce shrinking, asking more and more out of the younger leaders who really haven't had a chance to develop a lot of those leadership skills that generations before them have had an opportunity to develop.
Yeah, I distinctly remember being in my late 30s thinking I was ready to lead and telling my boss, who burst out laughing and telling me I hadn't paid my dues yet and it was nowhere near time to lead. So we don't have enough humans in the workplace, so we're looking at people at much younger ages to take these things on. And so the first time they're leading someone, how well do you do things the very first time you're doing it? Usually not very well. So if we don't give them the techniques and the skills that they need, including a tool like the performance acceleration tracker, they're winging it, and they're trying, and they're more than happy to try, and they'll tell you, I'll figure it out, and they will, but they're figuring it out on the very people you can't afford to lose.
Yeah, and another factor that we're dealing with nowadays is this COVID hangover, we're calling it. I think we all got a free get out of jail free card during COVID when it came to accountability, because we all had a lot of things we could blame the results on. And I think some of that is carried over into the workplace today. That whole mentality around shucking the responsibility and blaming it on COVID, we're still seeing play out today.
And now organizations really need more performance. They need more out of the people that they've had, and because they can't just go add additional people. So being clear about what those expectations are is critical for everybody involved.
And then lastly, a new generation. We're not quite sure whether that it has an impact on accountability or not. These poor Gen Zs are getting blamed for everything nowadays, and accountability is a part of that. May or may not have been generational. It's too soon to tell. But having accountability tools for all generations is important.
And again, it's really about clarity. I don't think there are too many people who would shirk their responsibilities if they knew it was their responsibility to begin with. There's going to be some, but for the most part, it's really a matter of not understanding to begin with.
So we've talked oftentimes, I think we've probably even done podcasts on our job scorecard. The job scorecard really is the foundation for what the performance acceleration tracker begins. And we want to start off by introducing some of the basics of the job scorecard to give you an idea what all that carries over into on the performance acceleration tracker. Again, the scorecards are created with a group of stakeholders who all have a vested interest in the job's success. Generally, it's the leader, the incumbent, if there's somebody there, direct reports, peers, other departments that may be impacted in the success of the job. All those people are responsible for helping to build out a job scorecard, which eventually becomes the performance acceleration tracker. That scorecard has activities and percentages of time and priorities and success factors, and we'll dig into some of those in a bit. But all the different components that one needs to know as to whether or not they're performing well against a scorecard. And that scorecard we have used often in hiring, as well as in performance management after the hire. And the biggest thing to remember about our scorecard, it's not a job description. It is something that is built by not HR generally, and is actionable. It's updated regularly. It's a living, breathing document.
Yeah, so keep in mind the job scorecard is the precursor to the PAT. So you really can't get to the performance acceleration tracker if you don't start with the job scorecard. So that's why we're going to do a quick review over that. One of the reasons I want to take a pause here is when we're involving the stakeholders, we are not involving them one at a time. They need to be brought together, and there needs to be some facilitated debate or at least discussion. Because if, let's say, we were trying to build it out and talking to each of the stakeholders one at a time, let's pretend you're building out a sales role. Well, operations should have a say on what the sales role is because they have to deliver whatever the sales guy sells. Finance always wants to have a say. The head of sales always wants to have a say. Customer service. So if I first go to the head of sales and ask what he wants in the role, and I'm writing that down, and then I go to Tony over in operations and ask him what he wants, and he gives me some slightly different things. Oh, now do I go back to the head of sales and see if those are okay? Or so you really need to have everybody together because by the time you're going back and forth, and back and forth, this could take weeks to build this thing out and get or you could just take the only things that are said by everyone and boil it down to there, and that little vanilla approach isn't going to work either. So the stakeholders are key and facilitating them all together. I will also warn you, while John says it's not a job description, it will not work the same way to take an existing job description and try to jerry-rig it into this format. It really is critical to just get out of those stakeholders the tasks and activities they really want the person to do.
Right. So here's what a job scorecard looks like. We typically create a PDF document like this and share it with candidates in the selection process. Many different parts to the scorecard. The first part, you'll see there's a list of activities that the stakeholders have created that they would want performed as a part of this job and put into the scorecard. You'll notice that the job scorecard has 3 to 5 categories. This particular example just chops off at the third category. Most job scorecards have 5 categories of activities. Each one of those categories are assigned or allocated a percentage of 100. This is very important, particularly in selection for candidates who are unfamiliar with the role to get an idea of where they're going to be spending most of their time. So the percentage of time is really important on the scorecard.
Hold on one second, because think about that sales role for a second. If you aren't crystal clear about how much time you think somebody's going to be spending in each category, and let's say 40% of the time is in prospecting, but you aren't clear about that, and the sales candidate you're talking to really doesn't like prospecting. If they realize how much of that time is being spent, that's really important. That could be a go or no go for that person. And from an accountability perspective, is this person going to take accountability for it? Without that kind of clarity, this individual is going to do the job as they like to do it, not necessarily as you need it done.
Yeah, and when we talk about the performance acceleration tracker, these percentages will get adjusted during each review period. Along with the priorities, you'll notice that each one of the categories are prioritized. In this case, is 1 through 5. But not only are there time allocations to the categories, but the level of importance of the category is identified by the priority.
So think about with priorities, sometimes there's no correlation between percentage of time and priority. Very often, the smallest thing you do may be the number one priority, but if it's not done well, it throws everything else off. Let's go back to our sales dude. What if that person isn't putting their sales plan together before embarking on who they're contacting for prospecting and who they're bringing in? They could look like a human pinball machine jumping from one activity to the next. So setting the sales plan maybe 5% of the time, but they have to time block for that. If it's only 5% of the time as the number one priority, they can't just hope they have extra time left over at the end of the week.
And the last component of a job scorecard are the success factors. And this is probably the most important component of the job scorecard. The stakeholders have the most fun putting this part together within the scorecard. This is to determine success of the role. Each of the success factors are worded yes or no, so that you can read the success factor and check off yes or no, it was accomplished for the previous review period. So how does this flow into the performance acceleration tracker, which is really what drives home the value of the job scorecard? We take the scorecard and we put it into a spreadsheet. Generally, it's a Google Doc, though you can use any other type of shared document. It's just some tool that both the leader and the direct report can both be accessing. That performance acceleration tracker is typically set up at onboarding or just before onboarding, so that by day one, it's in place for that new hire to be able to reference and begin making notes against. And then that performance acceleration tracker is rolled out for each review period after onboarding. It could be monthly, it could be quarterly, hopefully no longer than quarterly, but it's to track whatever review period the leader and the direct report want to set as their gauge, and allow this, since it's a spreadsheet, you can create a separate tab to reflect each of the review periods, so you can have a history of the review activity from period to period.
Studies have shown that if you are not regularly reviewing performance, the average supervisor remembers only the last 6 weeks of somebody's performance, unless there was something really dramatic or traumatic that happened in that year. But the last 6 weeks. So not only is this set up to be at least a quarterly review, but it also allows both the direct report and the supervisor to be making notes throughout the quarter so that nobody forgets anything that's important.
Right. So here's a kind of a clip of what the spreadsheet would look like after it's been converted. You'll notice that it still has the activity, the priority, percentage of time, and success factors. Those carried over from the scorecard. But what we've added are a couple of several new parts to the spreadsheet. You'll notice that there's an area with check boxes that each one of the success factors can be reviewed and checked off as yes, incomplete, no, or not applicable. Every one of the success factors should be reviewed every review period, and these check boxes checked. Most of the time, the answer is going to be yes. And it isn't so much whether the answer is yes or no for each one of these success factors, it's the conversation that takes place while you're reviewing each of them individually.
The success factors are set, though, so that it's the minimum, it's what's required for this individual to keep their job. So this is what you're getting paid for, is to meet all of these success factors. So to John's point, it should be all green. There could be something that happened that makes it a yellow or a red here or there, but that's rare. And it is a good time to get back on track if you've drifted off. If it's a brand new employee, the yellows or the not applicables may help you understand where someone needs some more training before they can really be expected to achieve those categories.
But again, the real value isn't so much the checking off of the yes, but it's the stopping and having a conversation on each one of the line items, which is why there's an area for notes on each one of the line items. It's very beneficial to note whether or not one of the success factors may have had some situation that you want to capture as a part of the history of it. Oftentimes, if somebody knocked it out of the park and a yes doesn't sound good enough, the note areas where you can add on and emphasize the success.
We just had a review with our office manager yesterday. And there were a couple of times where I said, I wish I could have green plus or make it a darker green for this because she knocked it out of the park. But we were able to put things into the notes section. It is important, though, that these notes can be completed and filled in throughout the quarter by both the direct report and the supervisor. Typically, the on-track or off-track pretty little boxes will not be completed until the two are sitting down together. But the notes can be, so you don't want to forget that somebody did this great thing for you. Great, go in and jot it down so you don't forget by the time the next review period comes up. The other thing that's important, when John mentioned that this performance acceleration tracker is used in the onboarding, when the stakeholders first get together and build out what the job is supposed to be in the long run, right? This is generally what the job is. During the onboarding, you might have to dial it back a little when the individual is just learning the job. So the percentages of time may shift in the first quarter. Some of the activities may change. And so this allows us to save what we really need up front, but then make those modifications by quarter and the expectations that are affiliated with those.
Right. The bottom portion of the spreadsheet looks like this, and you'll notice that there's some different areas that we call these 4 quadrants the Jack Welch quadrants, because back in the day he did his performance reviews on a napkin and asked
These are 4 questions.
These 4 questions each time. So these are free-form cells that can be populated before the review or during the review around what have you accomplished the last quarter.
Oftentimes, if you're running on EOS, those are relative to your rocks.
Yep.
Or initiatives if you're on a different operating system.
Your next period goals. So what are you going to accomplish this next quarter? How have you developed yourself? And then the most important quadrant is identifying how you have demonstrated core values in the previous review period. Go ahead and click. So you'll also notice that this is a spreadsheet. So what we do for each one of the tabs is we note the review period so that we can track the progress throughout. We lock down the original tab
So nobody can lose it.
to reflect what the job scorecard was originally built to look like, but each one of the review tabs will reflect not only the changed priorities and percentages of time, but also the performance data as well. So we have a little macro built into the spreadsheet. It's a Google Doc that automatically will create a new tab and save the existing tab and get you ready to begin recording what you need for the next review period. We mentioned using the performance acceleration tracker during onboarding. Though we recommend you share the job scorecard with candidates during the selection process, you'll be surprised how many have either forgotten about or maybe not even have gotten their job scorecard. And we strongly urge hiring managers or hiring teams to share the performance acceleration tracker or this job scorecard at the beginning during onboarding. That way everybody's clear from the very beginning what the expectations are. You will need to make some adjustments to the percentages of time and priorities to reflect that new hire's first quarter, and that's what you'll be doing during the onboarding as well.
Yeah, keep in mind that sales example we were using earlier. If you have a salesperson who needs to be spending 40% of her time in the first quarter doing prospecting because she doesn't have a book of business, that's fine. But by the second or third quarter, there will have been a book of business that is built, and there's more nurturing of now the existing clients, and the amount of prospecting percentage of time-wise may go down a little bit. So that's why some of those are done. To me, it is a crime for clients who invest in building the job scorecard, who use it only for selection, and then put it on a shelf and forget about it. You've done the hard work of getting all the stakeholders together, building that out, and not using it to accelerate the performance, shorten that learning curve, build a bunch of confidence and trust between the hiring supervisor and their direct report. you've done the hard work. Not taking advantage of it just seems like a crime.
And it's real easy with a Google Doc or some sort of shared spreadsheet to populate that and get it going. Once it's the PAT is in place and you've made the adjustments during the onboarding, it makes it really easy to conduct performance reviews. And we recommend doing a performance review at least 90 days, before 90 days on a new hire, typically after the first month. But it's really easy to go through the performance accelerator tracker. Are you on track? Make notes. Make sure you rely on those 4 quadrants on, what have you achieved? What are you going to work on? What are your next period goals? And then the core values. So it makes performance acceleration a piece of cake.
No-brainer.
Yeah.
The other thing to keep in mind is that if someone's job is at risk, then it's only fair to give them more frequent updates as to whether or not they're making the progress that you need them to make. And so doing it at least monthly makes a lot of sense. If you are in a very dynamic environment and things are changing rapidly and you're fearful something's going to fall between the cracks or there's going to be duplication of efforts, one of our poster children for using this perfectly is a local microbrewery, and I almost am afraid to call them a microbrewery because they're so big, which is OMB, or Old Mecklenburg Brewery. And the visionary and the integrator used it extensively when they were going from the one location and breaking ground and building out a whole nother location, and they wanted to make sure nothing fell between the cracks. So going over this more frequently to make sure who had to be chasing down all the contractors, making sure that was going on. Are we getting staffed up? Are we getting those people trained at our original location so we can shift them over there? And so nothing fell between the cracks. It was a little delayed in meeting the deadline, but it wasn't because of these two. It was because of the contractors. But it had nothing to do with these two. They were on the same page. Nothing fell between the cracks, and they were humming along.
So make sure each time you prepare your new tab for the next review period, and update any activities that may need to be added or taken off the spreadsheet. Same with the success factors. There may need to be some that need to be fine-tuned a little bit. The success factors in the activities should reflect the expectation for the next quarter. So there should be some changes. But the biggest changes are likely to come on the priorities and the percentages of time, because those will fluctuate based on business situations, based on how quickly somebody's getting up to speed on the job, whatever else might be happening within the organization. But those priorities and percentages of time, when the scorecard was built, was to reflect the ideal situation, which isn't necessarily going to be the case from quarter to quarter.
Right, and remember, things as simple as bringing on a new CRM is going to be disruptive to everybody. So how is that going to affect the percentage of time, priorities, things like that?
So like the job scorecard or anything else that you use in performance is not for everybody. A couple of things to keep in mind: you don't necessarily want to use a shared spreadsheet accountability tracker if people aren't willing to use it and hold people accountable. It's only going to work if there's that accountability that we talked about at the beginning in place, not only by the leader to be holding somebody accountable, but by the direct report to be receptive of it.
Yeah, absentee leaders or direct reports who are kind of like Teflon people, nothing sticks to them, they're not taking responsibility for anything, no matter how clear you are, it's not a good use of your time.
And if you're in a culture where performance reviews are uncommon or maybe not even accepted, it's probably not a good spot for the performance review or acceleration tracker. It's funny, we've actually had several clients where performance review or performance management isn't a part of their culture. Kind of odd, but if that's the culture, that it probably isn't right for it. And
it's interesting because one of the top reasons direct reports quit is because their leader doesn't give them feedback. But there are some cultures that just feel that giving performance reviews is not kind.
And then for this to work, you got to have some sort of shared document system, whether it's Dropbox or Google Docs or Teams. Somehow you got to have a way that at least the leader and the direct report can access the same document regularly.
Because remember, it's a performance review, not a performance surprise. So it should be everything that everybody knows is going on. Andy Jones, he is one of our true success stories. You know, maybe there's a possibility the whole accountability system came out of Andy. So Andy has used us extensively in bringing on team members, making sure we get right people in the right seats. And he was emphatic about making sure that this got used appropriately. And he keeps all of his meetings. But he also engaged with us for the accountability system because he realized he knew that he's bad at keeping those appointments and really holding people accountable. So he has one of our coaches sit with he and his direct reports, making sure they're updating this every quarter. It usually happens the first year of somebody's employment in a new job, and then you're in a good meeting rhythm on your own, and you're usually good after that. Or if somebody is moved from one role to another. It also gets used often if a new supervisor is assigned a new department and they don't know where everybody's at and they need to get on the same page. Andy has used us for 4.5 years on this.
Yeah,
because
he's got his accountability. I don't know how many tabs he's got on his spreadsheet, but there got to be a lot of them, and that's wonderful. He's got a great history. His direct reports love it. What's best about this is Andy's self-awareness, recognizing that he as a leader needed a tool to hold people accountable, and he uses the...
And no surprises. Everybody knows what's going on. And whenever, he might give us a call and say, I think I need to split out a new job. And I said, well, what's not getting done on that job? And is it a performance issue, or is it just that the job has grown to that extent? And it's much easier for him to realize when it's time to add a new role, because the person's been performing great. It's just been getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So that's one of our success stories.
So if you want to fill a sample of what the spreadsheet looks like, we've included it in a link where it will take you to our shared Google Doc that you can get into and make a copy of and begin to experiment with it on your own. So this is a live performance acceleration tracker link that you can only make copies of. You can't make any changes to the document until you make a copy into your own system. But including the macros, we've got available by filling out the form that this QR code takes you to, allowing you to link to this Google Doc and have a real live performance acceleration tracking document.
Yeah, one of the things I meant to mention earlier, when you are building out the accountabilities on the left-hand side, it's important to start with just making a laundry list of all the tasks and activities you want somebody to do, and then take it a step back and try to figure out the 3 to 5 accountability categories. It will not work out as well if you try to start with categories and populating the categories. So you want to start with the laundry list, so to speak.
Any questions? I got a couple that came in earlier here. One is, can the performance acceleration tracker replace an existing organization's review performance management system?
Oh, yes. In fact, we just had lunch with Doug yesterday. So I still remember the time we were going through this with Doug, and he was using this with his team, and he was using it every quarter. And we said, he gets to the end of the year, and he said, Cindy, do I have to use the regular annual performance review? Because it's just the same thing we've been doing all along. And I said,
right.
No. If this has been working, then just keep doing that. You don't need to go backwards and have another performance review tool or whatever. Just keep doing it quarterly. Pick the quarter you want to give compensation adjustments, and you can do it that way, but it doesn't have to be an annual review that's any different than the quarterlies. Somebody
asked for the QR code to get to the sample again, which is why I went backward. We have one more question here, and that is, how often have you found a good review rhythm to be?
Oh, you mean
frequently? How frequently would you?
At least quarterly. Like I said, I think quarterly is the best, assuming there's no crisis. If there are crises, with COVID, when we were in the middle of COVID, and everything was changing, laws were changing every day. Once we got the economy turned back on a little bit, everything was different. We were starting slow and then we were going fast. But I bet we changed our direct reports, performance reviews, at least monthly. Again, if you're in a dynamic situation, you're in hyper growth mode, you're expanding into some new market or to a different location, it may need to be more frequent. Never more than once a quarter. You're not going to wait never longer than once a quarter. Yeah. You're not going to wait if you're writing. This is like being a leader. A good leader is like riding shotgun. You want to help make sure your direct report is staying between the white lines and they're getting the right exit. So you want them to be successful. You're not going to wait until they're 10 miles past the exit you wanted them to take to go, you probably should have taken that back there. So you want to make this more relevant to them and in a way that they can make the changes and make the adaptations that are necessary to be successful in their role.
Here's a very important question. How much does the Performance Acceleration Tracker cost?
If you're just building out the Performance Acceleration Tracker and
the scorecard,
scorecard, we are in August of 2025. So as of today, it's $6,000 for one job.
Well, but the bottom line is the Performance Acceleration Tracker itself is free. The Job Scorecard is what is facilitated and created during the facilitation session. Coming out of the Job Scorecard work is the Performance Acceleration Tracking spreadsheet that we put together and we give the hiring team as a part of the investment for the Job Scorecard.
Right, but there are two 90 to 120-minute sessions with all of the stakeholders to facilitate putting together that job scorecard.
You wouldn't be able to create a performance acceleration tracker without a job scorecard. So, but it's a bolt-on to the investment an organization makes on the.
Yeah, because once you do the job scorecard, you're there. Right.
Right. So coming up next, I think that was it. Any other questions? We're good. All right. Next month, we're going to be talking about all the components to an effective hiring process.
Everybody thinks this is so boring. So an assessment is not a hiring process. An interview is not a hiring process. Those are steps within a hiring process, but you will learn if you are aggravated about making horrible hires, if you are tired of just making mediocre hires. There are so many cool hiring hacks that you're going to be able to pick up by checking out what the effective process is. Just come on and join us on that day, September 23rd.
And then in October, we're going to talk about some strategic leadership approaches for more senior leaders or established leaders. And then November, back to EQ, we're going to talk about a 360 approach to emotional intelligence. And then we'll wrap up the year in December with some of the things that we've learned in 2025 and setting up for 2026. So scan the QR code. That'll take you to the sign-up page. All these webcasts are available to be signed up for. We'll start sending out the details on September coming up here shortly. And then again, everybody who's signed up for this webcast will be receiving an email shortly with a link to all the resources.
Yeah, and if you can't if you can't make it to join us on the 23rd or any of the other subsequent days, if you at least register, you'll for sure get the recording and the slides. So make sure you do that.
And all the recordings are for even the past webcasts. I think we're probably 2 years into it now. Are all available on the web site as well. So that's it. We appreciate y'all being here to share the Performance Acceleration Tracker. And
we'd love some feedback on.
Give us some ideas on how it's worked for you all, some tips. If you want to talk to Andy, I'm sure he'd be happy to share how he loves it as well.
He's going to wonder why his phone's ringing off the hook.
All right, we'll see you all next month.
Have a great one.